What if the entire story we tell ourselves about the beginning of Western philosophy is wrong? We're about to dive into a really radical idea based on the work of scholar Algis Uždavinės. An idea that suggests the real roots of our thinking are buried somewhere we completely stop looking. And this is the question that just stops you in your tracks, the one that frames this whole journey. What if the arguments, the dialogues, the logic that we call philosophy, what if that's not the main event at all? What if it's just the after-image? You know, the faint glow left behind after something much more intense and real has already happened? So, yeah, this isn't going to be your standard history lesson. We're not just listing names and dates. Think of this more as a journey, or even better, a catabasis. It's a descent, a trip down into a forgotten source to find out what was there before philosophy even knew what to call itself. And that idea, catabasis, it's everything here. See, Uždavinės' book isn't just some dry academic text. It's a metaphorical journey to the underworld of thought. It's about retreating from the endless arguments to find out where the real magic started. We're not looking for the first logical proof, the first guy who won a debate. No, we're on a hunt for the origin of the philosophical voice itself. And that voice, Uždavinės says, didn't start by arguing. It started by singing. It persuaded with beauty long before it ever tried to win with logic. And that leads us straight to the central figure of this older world, Orpheus. You know him, right? The legendary musician who could charm animals, trees, even the gods of the underworld. But to really get this, we have to see him not just as a myth, but through a totally different lens. You know, modern academia has a neat little box for Orpheus. He's just a myth, a poetic character. Or if you want to get really dry, he's a symbolic complex. Basically, he's just decoration, right? Not part of the foundation. Well, Uždavinės argues that's a massive, massive mistake. For Uždavinės, Orpheus isn't some footnote in the story of philosophy. He is the story. He's the source code. He is the primordial initiatory root from which that whole tree of Western metaphysics actually grows. So you have to picture a world structured by these principles long before formal philosophy. You had musicae, the power of art and song to literally change your soul. You had memi, the idea that true knowledge isn't about discovering something new, but about remembering something divine you already knew. And you had ritual, this deep understanding that some truths are so powerful they can destroy you if you don't handle them correctly. Okay, so if Orpheus is the source code, then where does that leave the man we usually call the father of Western philosophy, Plato? Well, Uždavinės gives him a new job title. Plato isn't the inventor of metaphysics, he's its great translator. And this is the core idea that changes absolutely everything. Plato didn't just invent his ideas from nothing. He took the existing sacred structures of Orphic initiation, the soul's journey, the trials, the revelations, and brilliantly, geniusly translated them into the form we now know as philosophical dialogue. And you can see the translation happening right here. The Socratic method, with all its argument and proof, that's just a new kind of musicae, a new form of persuasion through the beauty of logic. And the whole philosophical quest for new ideas, that's a reframing of memi, the sacred act of remembering, which Plato would famously call anamnesis. Just think about Plato's most famous ideas. The allegory of the cave, the theory of forms. Uždavinės says the blueprint was already there. He inherited the whole structure. The soul's journey out of darkness, the idea that we have to remember our divine origin, the purification of our sight, and that fatal danger of mistaking shadows for the real thing, all of it is pure Orphism. Which means that Plato's famous method, the dialectic, was never just about how we know things, that's epistemology. At its core, it was about saving the soul, that's soteriology. It was a spiritual path to transformation, just cleverly disguised as a logical procedure. And this brings us to a huge problem, right? This massive gap between how the ancients saw philosophy and how we so often study it today. There's this profound disconnect between philosophy as something that changes your life and philosophy as just another academic subject you study from a distance. Uždavinės argues that modern scholarship makes what he calls a category error. See, in the ancient world, to know something was to be changed by it. Truth was something you participated in. But in the modern approach, knowing often demands you be a neutral observer. Truth is something you just represent from a safe distance, without it ever touching your soul. And Uždavinus just captures the sense of loss with this incredibly powerful, almost heartbreaking metaphor. He basically says that when we analyze these ancient texts without understanding their ritual, transformative heart, we're just sifting through cold ashes, with no idea that this fire once had the power to bring the dead back to life. And it all comes together in the most famous story about Orpheus, his tragic failure to rescue his wife Eurydice from the underworld. For Uždavinus, this isn't just a sad love story. It's a profound warning about the dangers of a certain way of thinking. So why does Orpheus fail? I mean, he has the knowledge, he has the power, he's already done the impossible. He fails because at that final, crucial moment, he just can't stand the tension. He can't trust the process. He gives in to this desperate need to see and to possess the truth, instead of just patiently letting it follow him into the light. Let's break down that fatal mistake. First, looking back is an act of impatience. It's trying to force a vision before you're spiritually ready for it. Second, it's an attempt to turn a living, breathing memory into a dead object that you can own and control. And finally, it is the act of grasping for something that can only, ever, be received. And that right there, that's the point. The tragedy of Orpheus is the tragedy of so much of our modern thinking. We demand that immediate, objective proof. We look back too soon. We try to dissect and analyze things that can only truly be understood by living them. We turn life into an object.
So we have to end with this really haunting challenge. If philosophy didn't start with logic, but with a sacred song so powerful it could move the dead, what have we really lost by trading that song for the cold certainty of an argument? What have we forgotten along the way?